Okay, good evening, folks. This is the meeting of the Marin Water Board of Directors meeting for October 18th. And we'll call the meeting to order. We do a roll call on attendance.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Kohler.
Here.
Vice President Schmidt.
Here.
And Director Bragman.
Here.
Okay, can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move
So
approval.
moved.
Can we get a second?
I'll be the second. I don't know who made the first though.
I have
Okay.
Director Kohler and then you, Director Gibson.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're so fast. Okay, do we have any comments on the agenda?
Not on the agenda.
Okay, can we get a roll call vote?
Sure. Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
and Vice President Schmidt.
Aye.
And
Okay.
I do want it noted, and I forgot to call out that President Russell is not in attendance as of now.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda?
Actually, Vice President Schmidt, we would be asking for public comment on the closed session if there are any, and then we could take general public comment after we reconvene.
Okay,
That's
sounds like the right process. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So, do we have any comments on the closed session?
There are none.
Okay, so with that, we move to the closed session. Okay.
That is it. And let me go ahead and pause the recording. Or turn on. There you go.
Okay, the closed session adjourned at 7:30 with no reportable action. Public comment on items not on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay. Director and general managers announcements and committee reports. Monty?
Nothing to add this at this meeting.
Jack?
I have nothing.
Cynthia?
Nothing for me.
Larry?
No committee, but I did want to point out that our agency won 2 awards from EPA for excellence in communications. EPA awarded 2 2022 WaterSense Awards, Sustained Excellence for Qualified Water Efficient Landscaper and Partner of the Year for Promotional Activity during the drought. So it's a pretty nice recognition for communications from the district.
Yeah.
National recognition. So I just wanted to point that out.
Cool. Thank you. And congratulations to the district. Ben? I have none. Ben?
Yeah, I do have a brief item, President Russell. I just wanted to share with the board that Sonoma Water is kicking off a stakeholder process called the Russian River Water Forum that aims to preserve the flow of water from the Potter Valley project into the Russian River. The district's been invited to participate, invitations specifically to our WAC and TAC representative have been invited to participate. Of course, this entire effort, as you're well aware, arises from PG&E's expressed plans to decommission or kind of to walk away from the Potter Valley project. And a lot of, over the last couple of years, work and energy has gone into this. I think all accounts are this is a pretty slow moving effort. It's complicated, and what I would suggest to the board, but we can certainly talk more about it, is the WAC chair along with myself and Paul, who's a TAC chair, would be briefing the board as these conversations happen, and certainly were there decision-making points, along the way and that sort of stuff, that would be for the board to make, not the representative. So that's all I have, President Russell.
Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move approval?
Can I get
Second,
a second? Roll call?
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Kohler,
Aye.
Vice President Schmidt,
aye.
and Director Bregman,
Aye.
and President Russell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, Peacock Gap recycled water.
Good evening, directors. Crystal Yasmin, Director of Engineering. Tonight we have Zach Talbot, who will be presenting this item.
Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. I have a PowerPoint to share.
Hi, Zach.
How's it going? Let's see. Let me minimize you guys. All right.
There you go.
Are you guys seeing this?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hi. My name is Zach Talbot. I am an associate engineer with Marin Water. I work in the design section. Tonight, I'll be going over the Peacock Gap Recycled Water Project and the preliminary design report 30% update. In tonight's presentation, we'll be going over the background of this project, a description of alternatives, a scope of work, our alternatives evaluation, the costs and funding opportunities for the alternatives, as well as our next steps.
And thank you for those overwhelming appendices you sent us.
Yes, it was a thorough report.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So a little background on the project. Marin Water hired West Yost in early 2022 to evaluate 3 different alternative pipeline alignments that would connect to existing recycled water infrastructure and expand the recycled water program to the Peacock Gap area of San Rafael. And the project is intended to serve the Peacock Gap area as well as the Peacock Gap golf course with recycled water. At this time, I'd like to introduce Adam Brown. Adam Brown is a senior engineer with West Yost and the lead engineer on this project. Adam, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Zach. And thank you, directors. It's a pleasure to be here. This really was a great project for us. We enjoyed working on the project and enjoyed working with Crystal, Zach, and Alex throughout the process. So it was a great project for us. So we have here on this first slide just the consultant team that we put together that worked on this. So as Zach mentioned, West Yost, we led the effort with project management and design. McMillan Jacobs was our geotechnical subconsultant, as well as gave us input on any trenchless crossings that would need to be considered. Panorama Environmental brought a lot of historical knowledge. They worked on some of the previous iterations of this project and put together, as you mentioned, a very thorough environmental analysis. We stopped short of preparing an actual MND or an actual CEQA document, but definitely put a lot of the pieces together there for that to take place should the project move forward. W-Trans was consulted for traffic impacts, public impacts related to signals, that kind of thing. And we didn't do any surveying at this stage in the game. It's very preliminary, but we did consult with Cinquini and Passerino as a local surveyor just to talk about costing and feasibility of surveying the different alternatives. Next slide. So here we have a map of all 3 alternatives. You can see in black that there were some segments that were common to all of the alternatives. Primarily, it was the 3 alignments that we referred to as the Bay alignment in blue. The green alignment was referred to as the North alignment, and the reddish orange color there referred to as the South alignment. Next slide. So to briefly touch on each alignment here, the Bay alignment was going to connect from directly from the Las Colinas Valley Sanitation District treatment plant. And it was going to be approximately 26,000 feet, requiring a horizontal directional drill installation in the Bay. It would require an easement through China Camp State Park, and it would be limited to approximately 6 recycled water service connections. The North alignment would be approximately 30,000 linear feet and would be located mostly in Marin County roadways, stretching from the intersection at Schmidt Lane and North San Pedro Road. It would also require the same easement through China Camp State Park, and it would have a few more connections, but still limited to approximately 10 recycled water service connections. And then lastly, the south alignment, although it does go in and out of city and county jurisdiction along Point San Pedro Road, it is primarily in city of San Rafael roadways, totaling approximately 46,000 feet. It does cross the SMART tracks and US 101. And there will be at least probably one trenchless crossing required. And then there are a total of approximately 67 potential service connections along this alignment. Next slide. So at a high level, what our scope of work entailed was we performed some information gathering and desktop studies. So that was interviews with stakeholders and regulatory agencies and property owners, evaluated the alternative alignments, and then identified the preferred alternative alignment. And then based on that, prepared 30% design drawings. That was included in the PDR. Next slide. So the information gathering and stakeholder meetings, we have some bullets here on the left of what that entailed. So we reviewed all of the documents that the district staff provided us, old plans, old reports. We did utility coordination and mapping, which involved us reaching out to all the local utility providers and getting their maps and their data and mapping all of their utilities along each alignment to the best of our ability. Stakeholder coordination, I'll touch on that in just a second. Geotechnical desktop study, looking at just at a high level, which alignments were more suitable for different types of installations, any things to take of note. From an environmental standpoint, we looked at cultural and biological components and prepared some desktop studies for those. We did a site investigation for all three alignments. So we walked the alignment looking at the utilities that we mapped, as well as any other obstacles that may not have been able to be seen in other documents, and then traffic considerations as well. So we have a table, I mentioned stakeholder coordination. We have a table here on this slide showing all the people that we talked to during this information gathering period. So we met with City of San Rafael, Marin County, SMART, State Parks, State Lands Commission, MC Stop, which also included the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as other attendees, BCDC. We also met with the golf course, and we did contact Caltrans several times, but we're not able to get a hold of them. It's also worth noting that about in June of this year, that district staff received a letter from State Park stating that they were not going to entertain an easement through China Camp State Park for this project. And should that be the case, that it would make the north and bay alignments infeasible if that were true.
One thing I didn't understand, Adam, the pipeline was in the water. How far does their property line go out in the water?
Oh,
Well,
it's the cut through to the golf course from the bay to the golf
At the other
course.
end?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you tunnel that one?
I don't know if you've ever been out to the state parks ranger station there, but this vertical alignment right there, it's a very low alignment. It's the one pass through the hillside. There's actually a fire road that goes through there. And that's where we would need alignment to get out of the bay and over the hill to Peacock Ave.
And we couldn't bore from where the tank is shown directly out that 1/4 of an inch on my screen into that pipeline and skip all that monkey stuff going around in the corner?
Well, I think any new pipeline, whether it's bored or whether it's open cut, would still require a new easement to establish the rights to have the pipeline there.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about your note, though. We're all government agencies here. I don't think we have to roll over just because State Parks is pushing back. There are techniques through the governor and so forth that can help us lower the bounds of their.
Very true, Director Russell, but there were other reasons why ultimately the southern alignment became the best alternative, but we'll get to that a little bit further in the
Also, it's
presentation.
10,000 feet longer, huh?
Well, I recall something about Indian burial grounds too as an obstruction. I assume that's probably in one of the northern regions.
I think that's back in China Camp, Jack.
In China Camp?
That's what I recall. That's where the burials were. They put the road right through them. There were shell mounds and things, as I recall, when we had Mike Bond here. That's what I remember. from the conversation. And they just blasted right through the shell mounts and thought nothing of it, but now all of a sudden they're all uptight about it. But I think you should, tone down the note a little bit, huh? Just take out the editorial part. Just say that they stated that no easement would be allowed through China Camp, and let it stand at that, instead of rendering the North Bay alignments infeasible.
Noted.
Okay, so we took all that information that we gained in that initial phase, and then we proceeded with our alternatives evaluation, which was taking all these different things into consideration. So the extent of the potable water demand offset that would be obtained by each alignment, how well the each alignment could be maintained in the future, the design considerations, considerations both during design and during construction, how constructible the alignments were, the public impacts and the stakeholder input that we received, environmental considerations, cultural, biological, permitting, and then overall project cost was taken into consideration as well. Next slide. So just to touch on a couple of the high level, just pros and cons of the things that stuck out for each of these alignments, starting with the Bay alignment. The main pro here is that it is the shortest alignment of the three. Unfortunately, there are a lot of cons with this alignment. There is not, comparatively, there's not much potential for additional potable demand offset with this alignment. During our MC Stott meeting, the Army Corps of Engineers stated that all other alternatives were likely going to need to be proven infeasible or having greater adverse effects before this alignment would be approved. Technically speaking, the length of the horizontal directional drill installation would really exceed traditional equipment limits and capabilities, and there would also be a lack of pipe staging for that type of installation as well, not to mention the difficulties with drilling through the Young Bay mud through there as well. And we also, as an alternative, going down to the last row down there, looked at sinking the pipe on the bay floor, but the bay in this area is extremely shallow. And that was going to prove to be an issue with navigation and exposure to the elements and that kind of thing.
And you don't think they could use the technique similar to what Bart did? Open a trench and drop the pipe into it?
Open trenching in the bay?
Yeah, that's how Bart was put in. They cut a V channel across the bottom of the bay, and then they floated the Bart sections out and sunk them into place, and then backfilled over it.
That was not a method that we considered.
Okay.
So just to be clear, this alignment was going to be some sort of bridge scaffolding that holds the pipe above water?
No, this was going to be a horizontal directional drill installation.
Okay, got it.
Into the mud.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
Through the mud.
Through the mud.
Right. So then moving to the north alignment, the pros for this alignment was that there really aren't a lot of utilities that we have to navigate along North San Pedro Road. It was the least expensive alternative, predominantly in paved roadways. Geotechnically speaking, was suitable. However, on the cons, there again, as we mentioned earlier, there wasn't a very large potential for additional potable demand offset compared to the south alignment, which we'll get to in a minute. It still had some challenging CEQA NEPA compliance efforts. I know we were touching on, some of the cultural constraints that might be at China Camp State Park. There do also appear to be both biological and cultural challenges with the north alignment as well. We did already mention the easement issue, which is there. And then one of the main challenges here is that the county is currently working on a road project to improve North San Pedro Road, and whether that involves relocating that road, whether it involves arch culverts, there's some different methods that are being floated around, and they're very early in their process. We did have some talks with them about what that might look like, but definitely timing is unknown, costs are unknown, cost sharing is unknown, at least at this time. And so to time it to where there's limited throwaway costs, or do we pair with their project, that was a concern as well for this alignment.
It's my understanding that one of the limitations on the expansion of our purple pipe system was the city of San Rafael, where the pipe terminates now. They weren't too keen about us digging the streets up to get the pipeline extended further. At least that's the story I've been getting since 2004.
Oh, well, that's changed, actually.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
That has changed.
So then the south alignment, the pros for the south alignment, as we mentioned, the highest amount of connections or the highest potential for potable demand offset really does have the most beneficial, it is the most beneficial for future expansion into other areas of San Rafael. So as we were just speaking or talking about, we did talk with the city of San Rafael. They were very supportive of this project and really wanted to get recycled water into the downtown area. And this gets the closest for them. So they actually were very supportive of the project. So that kind of bleeds into the third row down there. You know, we did get support from Marin County, State Park, City of San Rafael. A lot of people that we talked to really kind of looked at all three alignments and really kind of zeroed in on the south alignment to say, hey, we really think that's your best bet. It has the least challenging requirements in terms of easements and rights of way, and then also has the least secret compliance effort required as well. So
does it make engineering sense for us to do that portion? I assume you're heading towards the high school. That's the driving force where the biggest demand is. So does that make sense that we should be extending the pipe? It's on 3rd Street now or something like that, 3rd and B or something it ends, or somewhere over there, as I recall.
Yeah, the high school is definitely one of the connections that it would be connecting to. Yeah, and there are a few big customers for sure in those 67 connections.
And what I'm asking, Adam, is would it make sense for us to extend the Zone 1 recycled water to catch those? I don't know where the 67 are. Is it like, I assume the quarry is one of them, but that's way out, and the golf course. But is there stuff between the golf course and downtown, or are they all downtown?
Yes, Director. Some of the bigger ones, as you mentioned, is the high school. There's an elementary school. There's meeting ways, and there's also this alignment goes right past Dominican University, which is another large user.
Sure.
As well as I think a tennis club.
And also McNear's Park.
McNear's Park.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think we should think about that. If we can't swallow the whole thing, maybe we can swallow a bite.
Sure.
And because we haven't expanded the reclaimed water system since I've been on the board, because I asked a lot of questions about it when I joined the board. And so no progress has been made that I'm aware of any significance. I mean, hidden there, pieces are there, but there's been no expansion of the basic Zone 1 that was done before I joined the board.
Okay. So just touching on just the downsides, I guess, of this alignment, there are the most pros of this alignment. The downsides would be that there are a lot of existing utilities along this route. So there's multiple force mains in certain sections, multiple water mains, large, drainage lines, drainage crossings. So it would be the most congested to have to design and construct around. It is the most expensive alignment. It would be the most disruptive to residents just based on the different businesses and residents and commuters along the route. As well as because much of Point San Pedro Road is under moratorium, so there would be some extensive pavement restoration required in terms of grind and overlay, not just a trench patch, but that tends to inflate the cost as well, the expensive pavement restoration.
What about tunneling through here to avoid all that?
There may be options to tunnel in certain sections. It's not an end all be all, but yeah, there's definitely some sections where it would make sense to do a few trenchless crossings. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, with that, I'll hand it over to Zach.
Thanks, Adam. So this slide is showing an overview of the 3 alignments and their costs. So just briefly, for ease of looking at this, we'll look at the south alignment. It's roughly 4,600 feet in length, so just shy of 9 miles. As we mentioned, along that length, there's 67 potential connections, and if you were to equate them all together, they average a total annual demand of 285 acre feet. And with the total project cost estimated at $26.7 million, it's a $5,200 per acre foot when amortized over 30 years using a 3.75% interest rate. And I'd like to point out the total project cost shown here is the true total project cost. So it includes design, materials, constructions, including contingencies, as well as CEQA documentation. And you know, these costs are large. However, they're not taking into account available grant funding opportunities that are out there, which would lower the cost per acre foot. For instance, if the water district were to apply for and receive a $10 million grant for, say, the south alignment, it would drop the total project cost from $26.7 million to $16.7 million. And that amortized dollar per acre foot would go from $5,200 per acre foot to $3,200 per acre foot. So these are numbers used without potential grant funding opportunities. And as mentioned, the southern alignment did rise to the top as the preferred alignment. And the main key highlights are the fact that there are the most potential service connections along this route, 67, as we mentioned, with the highest potable water demand offset. And of course, when you get into the downtown area of San Rafael, you have the ability to further expand our recycled water project once the pipeline is in place. And as we mentioned, all of the major key stakeholders that we spoke to throughout this project were very supportive of the southern alignment. And I think that that went a long way in understanding politically and it just what everyone felt was be a good expansion for not only the water district, but for the community out there. And so with those three main bullet points, the southern alignment did win out over the north alignment, which was the next highest scored. And just a brief overview of what the southern alignment would entail. Again, it's roughly 9 miles of pipeline, mostly 12-inch PVC. Right now, we're proposing to cross US Highway 101 at Linden Lane, which would get us on the east side of the highway. And again, we would go right around past Dominican University. It would go past San Rafael High School and out San Pedro Road. We would eventually connect to the Peacock Gap water tank, and we would convert that from a potable water tank to a recycled water tank to meet the high demands of the Peacock Gap golf course during the summer.
Is this basically the alignment that our pipeline takes to feed that tank now?
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, so they face the same questions we're facing and they chose the same path, so.
Correct.
Do they service off of that line? Are there lateral connections directly off of our main feed or?
The Peacock Gap golf course? Yes.
Well, no, along San Pedro Road. Are the houses fed with lateral connections onto the main, or is there a separate?
Yes, there are houses like the parks and the elementary school. In fact, actually, there's a new development, Loch Lomond, that's out there that's all dual plumbed right now that would be able to connect to this new recycled water pipeline.
Cool.
And so, yeah, the total project cost estimated at $26.7 million, and that does include everything from design to construction and contingencies, and that equated to $5,200 per acre foot. And again, that's without grant funding. And if the project were to be funded, we can expect a project duration of roughly 3 to 4 years. And again, there's 67 connections along this alignment that could tap into this new recycled water pipeline, offsetting average daily demand of roughly 250,000 gallons per day, or 285 acre feet annually. So our next steps, the findings of this West Yost 30% preliminary design report will be incorporated into the final Jacobs Strategic Water Supply Assessment Report. And staff will continue to identify and pursue grant funding for recycled water projects. And that concludes our presentation.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
It was very interesting. Comments from the board?
I have a question. Are we actually taking steps to move in the grant direction? And we should also consider this project perhaps in conjunction with the North Bay Water Reuse Authority, who's obviously looking for projects.
Yeah, so our grant program, we've been briefing the board, is very active. There continues to be a tremendous amount of grant opportunities. Yet there's a limit to the grant opportunities. So we do want to be thoughtful on what projects we pursue in what offering. we believe, and what we're going to really zero in on, that some of the grant opportunities are may be focused specifically for recycled water projects. And we may, and we come back to the board, think about putting some placeholders in, not to lose the opportunity while the strategic water supply assessment is continuing and being finalized over the next month or two. So we will be looking at, are there some right grant offerings where this is a good fit? And coming back to the board with that.
Cool. Anybody else?
No, I was just going to say that it really does depend on getting some significant grant funding, like Zach was saying as well, because it's going to significantly reduce the unit costs. So do we have enough drawings? Are we at 30% design? Is that adequate for grant application?
Yeah, it's interesting. The grant world used to be shovel ready, and they've really moved off that for a whole number of reasons. So yeah, we are now, I think, very well positioned to put in a strong grant application for this project.
And I didn't go through that huge pile of appendices. Can we get a list of the potential customers or the target customers?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and the other thing would be to, you know, I don't know how far we want to go ahead of ourselves, but potential customers. I don't know if BioMarin is a big customer. I don't know if that's been included, but that's, you know, a couple blocks south on of where the pipeline would be. And just to kind of see what the potential is. There's a big cemetery a little west of there. So it would just be interesting to see what the potential service area would be.
And I'm guessing that I think you said the number was 285.
Yes, 285 acre feet per year. And those
And
would
about
be
223 for more of the Peacock Gap. So I'm guessing the difference is about 50 or 60 acre feet, which is the other connectors. So, you know, it's like a few of them come up to 220 and then the rest gets you to 285. Point being that, you know, most of the bang is in the big one, but you have to go a long ways to get it.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Larry, if you still have any questions.
No, I just, you know, I would just be interested to see what our potential service area is once all said and done. And I think that's going to be a big factor for the grant funders.
I think it's all laid out, Larry. There's a document with a map that shows 9 areas for reclaimed water, of which one is done. And that's the one where the central San Rafael is, the golf course and all that. Let's see if we can dig that map out. I'm sure Paul Sellier knows where that map is. I haven't seen it for a long time, but it clearly delineates the 9 potential areas for this, like I say, of which one is done.
Yeah, I guess just a couple of thoughts on this. You know, at $5,200 an acre foot, that's kind of commensurate with a number of other things that we're currently seeing and hearing, and even higher than some of the things that alternatives that are coming from our water supply resiliency analysis. So I think that's, you know, a big factor here is the grant funding. I think another piece of it, so taking these in pieces, it would be really helpful to have some work done to really identify the different grant opportunities and the range of what are likely grants that we might be able to get. I know there's no, until you get it, you don't know, but it would be the number of 10 million being thrown out there. I assume that was more or less a conceptual placeholder with no assessment behind it, or does that reflect some sort of an assessment?
Yeah, I'd say for a project like this, and we've had a lot of discussions with all these grant opportunities, 10 million feels like it would be very much on the high side for a project like this, given both the cost where they're looking for significant, you know, matching or well beyond, as well as, you know, they'll look at the water and, you know, it's a fair amount, but it's not, you know, a game changer.
Okay.
So I think 10 probably high, 5 feels like it'd be in the ballpark, but given the cost structure, and we aren't precluded certainly from more than one grant opportunity if we wanted to pursue it. But again, right, there's the competitiveness, and we don't want to, we want to choose for grants applications where we have, of course, the greatest opportunity to get it and the greatest benefit within the, somewhat limited pool of the grant opportunities, of
And
course.
could I also add that, recycled cost is certainly a factor, but recycled water also is a drought-proof water supply, which Jacobs will be taking into account when they start to rank the projects together. So while cost certainly this is an expensive project, whether or not it rises higher in terms of the ranking because of its reliability during a drought, that's something to consider.
Yeah, but
And also, I think we shouldn't forget our friends at Skywalker. George Lucas committed to 1.8 million, the last round of a voluntary contribution to get water contribution out to his ranches. So those things made me, Lucas got very, very pissed off at the city about the slowness. So he may be done with it. George doesn't often have a second shot, but it doesn't mean it's gone for good. It might be worth talking about and the money was to be spent on expanding our reclaimed water system. That was the offset.
Okay, maybe just to go back to my points, it would be really great to have just sort of an honest, or I don't want to say dishonest, I want a reasonable estimate of what kind of grant funding could be brought to bear.
I think you have it.
Take a good shot at it.
Yeah, I think you have it, Monty. 10 million.
I don't think I do,
high.
Director Russell. I just haven't heard it yet. So I would actually just like a little bit more clarity about that. So that would just be one thing. I think the other piece of it would be, as Director Bragman was bringing up, what's the potential range of additional future customers? Because that tie-in, we all can see the positive aspect of more people tying into that system. I think that the current 285 reflects some sort of initial estimate of how many beneficiaries there were. Is that over the life of the project? And if we build it, can we see maybe some of the assumptions about what might be the range if we build that southern alignment, maybe more people will tap in. That would really help understand, and that would again maybe bring the costs down, but also show a greater benefit that we're already alluding to. So it would just be helpful to, I think, see that worked out a little bit more so that we can, and that would frankly give us more of a range about that cost per acre foot again. I'm assuming that we're not capacity limited by the recycled water, that right now there's plenty of recycled water volume. And so it's really about how do we generate demand.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. And then just the last piece of it is that, recognizing that this is water for landscape, and that landscaping is where we can see potentially our greatest conservation benefit. It would really be, I like some thought to be given to if we achieved our conservation requests, in our community, how that might change that demand estimate of 285. Could that possibly drop just 10%, 20%, 30%? I don't know, but it would be ironic that we would be in a situation where the cost of the project is going up because people are actually doing what we're asking, which is to conserve. So just something I'd like to have a little thought put into, because it's an important project. The cost being one thing for sure, the inconvenience of this construction through pretty much all of San Rafael is not inconsequential. That alignment is really the high school, I take my kids out to school that way. This is going to be an inconvenience.
How about San Pedro Road, Monty?
but yeah, and that is within my district. I'm sure I will probably hear about it.
Oh, yes.
But this is not an inconsequential project. It's important. I just would like to have a little bit more information so that we can make a good decision.
Ben, just a couple more questions from me. I know we have excess supply right now of recycled water, but the city of San Rafael seems to be pretty interested in redeveloping Northgate. That could be 1,000 units. That would seem to soak up a lot of our capacity. So that's one thing is we're going to need to kind of figure out how all this fits together. And the other question, I guess the more direct question is, does the recipient, Peacock Gap Golf Course, bear any of the costs?
It's a good question. I understand historically they were engaged in that discussion. I don't believe we've engaged them directly in terms of this. I think with this information, it's a good time to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, they originally offered $5 million, but as a loan, not as a gift.
Right.
So they were interested. They were very interested. The owner of the golf course was extremely interested.
The other thing I think for us to think about is we start thinking broadly about our rates is many agencies have moved away from providing a discount on recycled water, given that our job is to provide water for the need and the appropriate quality for the use. And that's what recycled water does. We're kind of generally in the industry, right, and our broad community kind of past the point of having to discount it to sell it and to get public acceptance. So that's another kind of rate piece for us to think about broadly.
You know, I'd also add that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd also add that, switching to a reliable supply that's available during a drought has a tangible benefit to the golf course. And whether or not we want to look at our connection fees to realize that benefit, at this point in time, the way that our ordinances are written, the golf course would have the rights to transfer their entitlement from potable water to recycled water at no cost. So, I mean, there is a benefit to them switching to recycled water. We could relook at that.
Crystal, is there another connection fee that they would pay for a project like this?
No, the way our written element that they have already purchased from potable to recycle.
Okay.
But there is a benefit to switching to recycled in that they could have that water during a drought. And as you saw, McInnes Golf Course was green during the drought because they used recycled water.
Yeah.
So the answer is locate the golf course next to the wastewater plant and you fix the problem, huh? Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Oh, sure.
That's okay.
Of course.
I want to get back to Monty's point. We passed over it quickly about estimating the grant opportunities, because I think it's important that we get a little clarity around that. And while we can't know for sure, we really can get something of an estimate. I mean, there is an enormous amount of federal money available through the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, as well as the recent Inflation Reduction Act. It's billions. I will say, I think the idea of grant, and this is where my recommendation, or I guess my request to staff, is to bring in Matt. And obviously we can't know with certainty, but I think Matt should be able to give us a fairly reasonable range, given what I'm sure he's fairly familiar with these two statutes by now. And the reason I say that is because I think most of the grant money is being targeted for disadvantaged communities. And we may be able to make something of a case, to the extent that this is water that would be available for some of our lower income residents, and certainly we have those. But my expectation is that most of this money would be coming in the form of still very cheap, low interest loans through, through those bills, through the SRFs, possibly through WIFIA. But this is exactly the kind of project that, that those bills are set up to support. So I guess my request would be that when this comes back, we have an estimate from staff about the likelihood of grants versus loans, and what those, what is reasonably likely, because even the loans are going to require, I would expect some kind of local match.
Okay. How about questions from the public?
We have a couple of public comments. I just want to remind them that they have 3 minutes to leave their comment, and at the 15 seconds left of their public comment, the sound will go off. So we have 3 speakers so far, and they are, pardon me, they are Larry Minikes, Ed Jamison, and Andrew McCullough. So Mr. Minikes, I'm going to ask you to please leave your comment, sir.
Good evening, and I'm here to rain on this parade a little bit. What we're talking about is 285 acre feet, which represents 0.36% of our total water supply. That's what we're talking about here. For a disruptive cost of 26.7 million, which we know will likely go up by the time we're done. And this with minimal options. And the only option that we're given is the most expensive, the most disruptive of all the options. So the questions that have to be asked are what is the carbon cost of this project, and what are the greenhouse gas implications of using PVC, of bringing in tar and gravel, hauling all this stuff in, concrete, the traffic jams, all of this for what? For a golf course, all right? Where I heard disadvantaged communities, but at the end of the day, this is for a golf course. And this is the time to ask, does a small, because what we're looking at is 255,000 gallons per day. Would a small desalination plant, looking at that as an option, one of those small ones we saw from Australia that's in a box that you can place, say, in the brickyard, you have minimal disruption to all of the communities. Does it make sense? I am not saying this is what we should do. I'm saying, is anyone asking the question, are there other options to running this pipe all through San Rafael and just really making a mess of everything for probably a very long time? And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minikes. The next speaker we have is Mr. Ed Jamison.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to reinforce the bond's aggressive thoughts on this. This $27 million project to get a tiny 285 acre feet annually at a cost of $50 to $200 an acre foot should be a non-starter. And it would be a waste of our limited bonding capacity, which needs to be preserved for more material additions to our water supply. Without significant grant funding, this project just doesn't pencil out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jamison. And the next speaker is Andrew McCullough.
Hi, this is Andrew McCullough. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Terrific, thank you. So I've spoken before. Obviously, I'm speaking from the perspective of the Peacock Gap Golf Course ownership. We have been very supportive of a project like this for quite some time, and we appreciate very much the hard work that staff, with the outside consultants' help, has put into this analysis. We stand ready, willing, and able to assist in any way we can. There are still a couple of options out there where we might be able to step forward and, if not defray some of the costs, create efficiencies that maybe aren't readily discernible in the presentation. But I'd like to have those conversations offline with any or all of you so that we can see this project in whatever alignment works best come to fruition. Crystal Yasmin did make the point, and it's very important to us, the issue of reliability. That is a reliable water supply. And yes, several years ago, we did offer $5 million, as Larry Russell points out, to help finance in the form of a low interest loan, the installation of such a pipeline. So whether it's something like that or something different, we are here to assist if we can. So I look forward to further discussions as this moves forward towards what I hope will be a finished project in the years to come.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. I have no further speakers.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, well, let's move on. Resolution awarding contract number 1988 for furnishing and delivery of welded steel pipe.
Hi, good evening, directors. We have Mark Casare here. He's our engineering manager for construction, and he's going to present this item.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Good evening, board members. Mark Casare, engineer manager for construction. The item before you today is a recommendation to award contract 1988 to West Coast Pipe to furnish and deliver 3,800 linear feet of 4 and 8-inch welded steel pipe. We advertised an invitation for bids on September 28th and held a bid opening on October 10th. We received one bid for the contract. It was submitted by West Coast Pipe Linings Incorporated, and it was in the amount of about $175,000. The pipe is anticipated, if awarded, to be delivered by March 17th, 2023. And the purpose of this order was for the Aaron Drive Talus subdivision project. It was not previously included, the welded steel pipe for that project, on the 2021 pipe order. And so this order will replenish those stockpiles committed to other projects such as Capital and Fire Flow. So the cost for this contract would be capitalized to that Aaron Drive Talus Reserve project, which is currently in construction. So staff is recommending to the board to authorize the general manager to execute contract 1988 with West Coast Pipe Linings in the amount of $175,206.60.
And Mark, when you say it's capitalized, you mean it's actually paid for by that developer?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So
it's a no cost, basically.
exactly. The cost will be attributed directly to the project.
Right, and we wanted to get current pricing for their reimbursement to us, so we ordered the pipe. They're taking it from our stockpile, but we're gonna refill our stockpile with current pricing, and then they'll be charged for that.
How was the pricing relative to how it's been?
It was very reasonable. We did analyze
Sounds
it.
reasonable, yeah, to me.
Right, yeah, we looked at the last 2 years of the pipe contracts, and this pipe represented about 14% year-over-year increase from the 2021 order. We looked at the PPI for iron and steel, which, as you guys have seen, is almost doubled in the last 2 years. So we've attributed some of that cost to the cost of steel, as well as some marginal increases to labor, specifically manufacturing. But also of important note, this quantity is only about 4,000 feet of pipe, which is about a 10-fold decrease in what we typically see. So we can't afford the unit price benefits of the economy of scale we would see on these larger pipe contracts. Sure. So we did find it to be a very reasonable cost.
Good. Any other questions? Any questions from the public?
There are none.
Okay, I need a motion to award the contract.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Director Gibson,
Where you go?
okay, I don't see him.
Can we,
Director Kohler,
aye.
Vice President Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
and President Russell.
Aye. Okay. Well, Mr. Sellier, you're up and at it. Number 8, water supply update.
Good evening, Directors. Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. And I have a short presentation, about 76 slides to share with you this evening on our water supply update. No, you've seen the copy already, so we'll get out of here pretty quick. But so our water supply update tonight is, we're going to take just a peek at the year in reviews. The water year ended September 30th, and it's good just to look back and see how we finished there. Look at our current supply and then some projections with some updates on the strategic water supply assessment. So looking at our rainfall, lots of lines. These charts, you either have lots of slides or one slide with lots of lines. So in this case, we've got the one slide with lots of lines.
I like the one that shows lots of rain.
Yeah, well, this one doesn't do too bad. We finished
not too bad.
22 pretty darn close to average. And you can see relative to, the prior few years, 2021 drastically low, and the year before that sort of in the middle there. And then looking at our reservoir storage at year end, the thick black line at the top, we're above average. Today I think we're at 107% of average storage for the time of year. So we finished the water year on a pretty good note in terms of storage. Looking at where we are now, we're just adding in, we're right at the beginning over here on the left, this 2022-23. So this is water year 23 that we're currently in, which will end in September of 2023. We're clearly in a much better place than where we were, and thankfully for that. And we're, again, we're above average starting this water year. So looking decent as we move forward. And as we start to look at our conservation numbers, they're holding steady at about 25%. We look at, I think, production numbers relative, so this is relative to 2020 water demand, we're down 25% from that mark. If we look at production last year compared to this year, we're up this year in terms of production, just a little bit, maybe 3-4%, if we were to look at this same day last year. So production is trending up just a little bit, but conservation is still holding at around 25% against the 2020. Looking at our storage projections, again, the black line sort of reflects the journey that we've been on in terms of reservoir storage levels. And then these dashed lines are reflecting our, these are our projections going forward. And you can see if we had a very similar year to last year, we would see, reservoir levels continuing to drop as we move through next year. This was, of course, a very dry year. And there's no good way for us to really predict the future. So what we have here is a fairly wide range between this very dry year, water year, and an average year. So if we're just average, it looks like we'll be spilling sort of in January of 2023. But if we're, even if we were very dry, as in this orange line, we're still going to be over 50,000 acre feet come January. And looking into the crystal ball, it's just challenging. And to do that, we tend to look towards some of the experts like NOAA. And so they're, who much better than, we are in terms of projecting whether the climate is going to be wet or dry compared to the normal. And so we've got a few slides. We look at NOAA's short-term forecast here, which looks sort of promising. And just to draw your attention to some important dates on here, October 17th is when these were issued. So yesterday, so very fresh. And they relate just to that last week in October. And what they're saying here is it looks like the temperatures are going to be trending below normal. So the probabilities are that we'll have lower than normal temperatures at the end of October. And similarly on this precipitation outlook chart, that we're going to be slightly above normal in terms of the probability of receiving more rain than maybe we might normally do for this time of year. As we look further out, and this is a 1 month outlook, and these were issued, almost a month ago on September 15th. So this was one we looked at right at our last water supply update. And it showed that we were trending in terms of precipitation, that we were leaning below. So the probabilities were we'd receive lower rainfall in October than normal. But that's changed just 2 weeks later, from September 15th to the 30th, the outlook for October, it changed to equal chances, which is sort of, they don't know. It's just unpredictable at this time. It's better than leaning towards low, but it's still, you're just unable to kind of positively say what's going to happen in terms of looking at this forecast. As we look at temperature over that same period, so from the 15th of September, what changed between the 15th and the 30th of September, it does look like very slight change, but essentially kind of confirming their initial trends that we were going to be above normal temperatures for October. So that probability is trending warmer. In terms of the water supply assessment, the work that's underway, we're continuing to develop the technical report. The folks have a lot of interest in, that's going to contain all of our assumptions and calculations and allow us to get a really good review done. The board is aware that we're now engaged with Madaus and have had meetings, and they're reviewing our conservation as a water management alternative. In addition, Jacobs are starting to put together initial sort of draft portfolios and strategies for us to discuss with the board and the public. In terms of the schedule, we have a public workshop coming up on October 25th, where we're going to review that presentation on the initial evaluation of the water management alternatives. And just roughly speaking, in November, we'll be bringing portfolios and strategies, and then in December, starting to touch on the recommended roadmap. So our next steps, as I say, we're drafting that technical report on the strategic water supply assessment. And just, with all the sort of uncertainty really in the forecast that we just went through, we're, if dry conditions do continue into December, some of the considerations that we'll bring back and talk about more and in more detail are continuing to maximize supplemental water from Sonoma, and whether we should think about pumping Phoenix and Sewell reservoirs. Today, though, we are at 107% of average for this time of year, and we're going to hit December in pretty decent shape, almost 70% of capacity, and conservation levels remain strong compared to 2020. And that's the presentation on water supply tonight. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
You got the other 54 slides coming in?
Yeah, next week.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Any questions from the board?
So are we currently, your last slide had maximizing our supplemental water supply. Are we are currently taking water, if I understand, our supplemental water supply from Sonoma, but it is part of the take or pay amount of water that we have. Basically, we take it or we lose it, and we're still in that phase where that's the water volume that we're getting delivered. Is that correct?
Director Schmidt, at this point, we are still constrained by Sonoma. So in support of their temporary urgency change petition to reduce releases from Lake Sonoma, the contractors and water agencies have reduced the amount of water that we're all taking and have increased their use of local supplies to offset. So until the winter rains arrive, it's likely that mode will continue. So for sure, we'll be, at this point, we're looking at the 5,300 acre feet.
But my question is, are we in the process of taking the 5,300 acre feet right now?
We're still, yes, in that volume category, yeah.
Okay,
So Paul, when would you, I think what Director Schmidt's trying to get at, he certainly can speak for himself, but when would we project, based on the current curtailment, that the 5,300 acre feet will be used and will be at kind of the decision point in terms of going beyond that?
Exactly where I was going, Ben.
Okay, yeah, I haven't done the math to see exactly where we are on that, Ben. It seems likely, maybe hopeful, that winter rains will arrive before we arrive at that point. But if we were to maintain the curtailment, I could certainly run that calculation.
Yeah, I think it's a good piece of information, right? Because there's a financial piece and the supply piece. So at the next update, we'll bring more details on that.
But you'll come back to the board before we begin to purchase beyond that 5,300 acre feet?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Any comment from the public?
Yes, we have Mr. Phil Sauter. Hold on, Mr. Sauter. I will set you up with our timer here. And I've unmuted you, sir.
Thank you, and thanks for that presentation. I'm chomping at the bit for next week's meeting on the water supply assessment. It's called a workshop. However, if you go to the Water District's webpage, it shows up as a board meeting. I don't know that there's any indication to the public that it's going to be talking about water supply. There's no agenda. And I did ask a couple weeks ago that, or a couple meetings ago, that Madaus be included, and I'm really glad to hear that we're actively engaging with them, and I'm going to assume that they'll be part of that workshop. A week ago or so, or the last meeting, I'd asked if they could be kind of given the bogey that we'd like to look to them to see if they could come back with a recommendation to generate 4 million gallons a month in conservation savings. And I don't know if they've been given that bogey or not. It's kind of like these meetings are, I shot an arrow into the air, it fell to the earth, I know not where. It seems like the public comments are being picked up and put into place, but it would really be nice to see an agenda that says this is what we're going to discuss and this is what we're going to have for the public to comment on. It would really be helpful in terms of preparing for those meetings. So that would be my first comment. And second comment, veering away from conservation for a minute, I know we've talked that one of the water supply options was dredging Nicasio Reservoir. And the last I heard about that is that it was a very high impact process. I went Googling, which is always a dangerous thing to do. And I find that there are such things as low impact dredging. And I don't know the kind of dredging that Jacobs is looking at, but I'm wondering, I realize that hardly a day goes by that the Nicasio Reservoir doesn't receive some silt. And I'm wondering if going forward, there would never be a day that goes by that we're not doing a little micro dredging out of Lake Nicasio, because it's just going to continue to silt up. So I was kind of wondering, which kind of dredging we're talking about, and if that could be addressed at next Tuesday's meeting as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Can I just ask before we move on, can staff respond to that? Because I've had the same question about Madaus, and it's not only Phil, I think several of us on the board have asked for some time, whether or not they're, in terms of the water supply assessment, whether or not we can have some sort of scenario with a, potentially higher than status quo object. You're not dinging me, are you?
No, sorry. I was trying to get to the timer before you got dinged. I apologize.
So I'm just saying, I think board members have made similar requests and we really haven't heard. I just saw the contract for Madaus coming the other day, but I haven't had a chance to read it thoroughly yet. So can the staff speak to whether they will be at that workshop and whether or not this issue of exploring the potential the way we have with other water supply objectives is going to be discussed?
Sure. The workshop's designed to have our customers have an opportunity, kind of a manner that's less formal than a board meeting, with 3 minutes and one opportunity to ask questions, as the past workshops have been, to really dive into all the work of the Jacobs to date and just work through all the questions that are out there and do our best to respond in terms of where we are at this point and the information we've brought to the board in terms of the water supply assessment efforts to date. So that's the design of the workshop, and it really follows the last couple that we've had on this, which is just kind of a deeper dive in terms of engagement of our customers into their questions and comments and concerns on. So the general design is we go through the materials that generally consistent with what we've provided to the board, but then we really have an extended period until there's no more questions and just go back and forth and really satisfy. And we've really gotten very positive feedback using that format. The second question, no, Madaus isn't going to be there. The current plan, and I'm explaining it, is let them do their work that has just kind of kicked off, and we're targeting mid-November for them to come to the board and the public and present their findings at that point in time.
Okay, thanks.
And I think Phil's point is a good one too, and we should think about giving a challenge like that. It's kind of an interesting approach.
Well, it's what we have been doing, with all due respect, it's what board members have been asking for since March. So I'm glad Phil saying it is finally getting through, but and I want to give Mr. Sauter all the credit in the world, but it's not a new idea. And I am concerned that we're going to have, I mean, it's great, the approach that you've outlined, Ben, but I'm concerned we're going to have that kind of session. But we're apparently skipping over this one issue, but okay. I just want to really put it out there on the record. This is not a new idea. This is an idea that several of us on the board have been advocating for the last 8 months.
Is there a way that, I mean, I look at this conversation that's going to happen next week as hopefully it's a really good informative discussion. It sounds like it's getting set up that way. But is there any reason that somebody from Madaus couldn't attend as a participant and be part of the dialogue? I mean, I know that they have other ongoing work, but it certainly seems like an informative discussion, and I can only imagine that their presence would only add to the conversation. I know there's contracting that, and other things that might be an issue, but it's 2 hours.
It's not that. It's really the intent of this is a deep dive for the people that are very interested in IPR, a deep dive for the folks that are really interested in desal, a discussion certainly on conservation in terms of what staff has projected, and going all into that with the reasoning and rationale and understanding. Madaus is a compliment. It's just not ripe yet for next week. But we're going to have time. We are anticipating when we do bring the Madaus to ensure the public is well aware of the opportunity. And depending how that discussion goes, can be further dives in certain areas and refinements to their analysis. That we're kind of looking at this as a continuum. We'll be talking about all these options even post the roadmap, because we'll be finding different opportunities, and so it's not. I think the board certainly appreciates it, but the decision on a roadmap isn't a decision on a project, right? It's a decision on a path to pursue. And I expect it likely will have many elements directing staff. It's not proceed with project A, it's develop project A, further evaluate project B, consider creative approaches to concepts that we hear on, so I think it's moving in the right direction, and the Madaus effort is intended certainly to confirm or not the analysis that staff did, see if there's other opportunities. We did share, as the board will see in the scope, the key questions that we understood were out there to inform their effort. So we've had discussions with them at staff, and they seem to really understand what we're trying to do. So I think the board and the public are going to appreciate certainly both the upcoming workshop as well as the Madaus effort.
Okay, upcoming meetings.
Good evening. I just want to reiterate to the board that there is the Operations Committee meeting this Friday at 9:30. The Strategic Water Supply Assessment Community Workshop 4 is next Tuesday. The agenda will be posted tomorrow, and I'll also send calendar invites to the board if you'd like. And then on the 27th of October is our Finance and Administration Committee board meeting. External meetings, the next one that I'm aware of is again Friday, November 4th, the North Bay Watershed Association board meeting. The Lagunitas Creek Technical Advisory Committee meeting is also held that same day. And the Sonoma Water Advisory Committee meeting is on Monday, November 7th. Are there any questions?
Yeah, which day is TAC, Terry?
TAC is the WAC TAC's November 7th at 9 a.m.
The Lagunitas TAC.
Oh, the Lagunitas TAC is Friday, November 4th at 9 a.m.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
With that,
thanks, everybody.
let's adjourn.
Thanks, folks.